She was promised to a galactic tyrant, but fell for a human rogue instead. The galaxy's a powder keg, and Solari warrior diplomat Lila's trapped, betrothed to the ruthless King Karan to stop a war she doesn't trust. Enter Jake Carter, ex-smuggler, scarred survivor, and the human who ignites her defiance. Amid assassinations, treachery, and a crumbling treaty, their forbidden chemistry explodes. Screw duty, they're choosing each other. But can a rogue and a rebel topple an empire, or will their passions spark a galactic bloodbath? Stick around, this ride's just getting started. Loving this sci-fi thrill? Subscribe now. It's free, and we've got more epic tales coming your way. Thanks for joining us, guys. The Emerald Trade Station loomed ahead, a chaotic sprawl of steel and light floating in the void of space. Jake Carter stood at the edge of the shuttle's viewport, his gray eyes narrowing as the station's jagged silhouette sharpened against the swirling green nebula beyond. He tugged at the collar of his worn leather jacket, the faded emblem of Orion Security stitched on the sleeve, a private outfit that paid him to keep people alive, not ask questions. Beneath the jacket, his old smuggling scars itched, a reminder of the THRYSS interrogators who'd once carved their displeasure into his skin. Now, here he was assigned to babysit some alien diplomat in the middle of a galactic powder keg. Approaching Docking Bay 3, the pilot's voice crackled over the comms. "Hope you're ready, Carter. This one's a hot mess." "Always am," Jake muttered, his hand brushing the concealed pistol at his hip. The shuttle shuddered as it locked into place, and the airlock hissed open. On the other side stood Captain Reese, a grizzled woman with a face lined by years of stress and a no-nonsense glare. "Carter," she said, clapping him on the shoulder as they fell into step. "Good to see you." Command didn't exaggerate. "This job's a damn volcano waiting to blow." "Brief me," Jake replied, his boots echoing on the station's polished floor as they moved through the bustling trade quarter. Merchants hawked glowing trinkets and multi-eyed aliens bartered in guttural tongues. But Jake's focus stayed razor-sharp. "3 breaches in the last week," Reese said, her voice dropping low. "Last one took out 2 Solari guards. Could be THRYSS radicals pissed about the treaty, or Solari rebels who don't want their girl cozying up to a lizard king. Either way, it's your problem now." They reached a crowded corridor, and Reese shoved a datapad into his hands, security protocols, schedules, and a profile on his new charge. Lila, a Solari diplomat promised to King Karan of the THRSS. Jake skimmed the file. Solari, lithe, feline-like aliens with night vision and a warrior streak. Lila's photo showed a striking figure. Glossy auburn hair, golden eyes that seemed to pierce the screen, and a tail adorned with silver rings. She wasn't just some pampered royal. She'd fought in the Solari border wars before being dragged into this diplomatic circus. The corridor narrowed, and a sudden surge of traders pushed through. Jake sidestepped a hulking four-armed vendor, only to collide with someone softer. His hands shot out to steady himself, landing squarely on Lila's chest through her thin diplomatic tunic. Time froze as he registered the warmth beneath his palms, her sharp intake of breath, and the way her golden eyes flared with indignation. "Watch it, human," she snapped, shoving him back. Her voice was smooth, with a harmonic edge that made his skin tingle. Sorry," Jake said, pulling his hands away fast, though a grin tugged at his lips. "Crowds, you know." Lila's tail flicked, her glare softening into something almost curious before she turned away. "Keep up, Carter. I don't have time for clumsy escorts." Reese snorted behind him. She requested human security, said our unpredictability might throw off the assassins. "Don't expect her to like you for it." They reached a secure lift, and Reese palmed the scanner. As the doors closed, she faced Jake. "Listen, they don't respect us. To them, we're hired muscle, useful but barely evolved. Prove him wrong, or we're both screwed." "Respect's overrated," Jake said, his tone dry. "I just need her alive." The lift opened into a sleek hallway lined with glowing plants. 2 Solari guards posted outside an ornate door. Their feline faces stayed blank, but their claws flexed as Jake approached. A tall Solari male stepped out. Torin, the security chief, his amber fur marked with battle scars. His green eyes sized Jake up like he was a stray mutt. "This is the human." Torin's melodic accent dripped with disdain. "Jake Carter," Reese confirmed. Ex-smuggler turned security. Ran ops in the Verge conflicts. 0 casualties on his watch. Torin's ear twitched. Lila will see him now. Jake stepped into Lila's quarters, a blend of luxury and function. Silk drapes, low lighting for her night vision, and a faint scent of spice in the air. He scanned the room. 3 exits, plus a hidden panel behind a textured wall. A voice broke his focus. "Done turning my home into a war zone." Lila entered, her movements fluid and deliberate, tail swaying like a metronome. She was stunning. High cheekbones, full lips, and those golden eyes that seemed to glow. Her tunic hugged her curves, and Jake forced his gaze to stay professional. He bowed slightly, the Solari greeting. "Jake Carter, Orion Security. I'm here to keep you breathing until the treaty's signed." She circled him, her tail brushing his leg. "A test, maybe. Your kind loves a fight. It's why we picked you. That paranoia is useful." "We call it preparedness," Jake said, meeting her stare. "You're marrying King Koran for peace, right? Trade routes, into the war, millions saved." "And my hand to a HFY Tyrant," she added, watching him. "Does that bother you, human?" "My feelings don't matter," he said evenly. "Your safety does." A smirk curved her lips, showing a hint of fawn. "Clever answer. You might survive this." Torin re-entered. "The trade summit starts soon. The HFY delegation's here." Lila nodded. "Let's not keep them waiting, Carter. First test, don't get me killed." The summit hall was a cavernous dome, crystalline chandeliers casting rainbow light over the crowd. Jake stayed 3 steps behind Lila, eyes darting for threats. HFY delegates approached, tall, reptilian figures with scales glinting emerald and turquoise. King Koran led them, his iridescent crest flaring, a predator in royal garb. "Lila," Koran's voice purred, harmonics designed to soothe. "You honor us." She mirrored his elaborate bow. "The honor's mine, your majesty. May this mark a new era." Koran's slit pupils flicked to Jake. "Your human guard. Curious choice." Jake caught a flicker near a side entrance. A server, uniform slightly off, hands slipping into a pocket. Instinct kicked in. He lunged, yanking Lila back just as an explosion ripped through the hall. The blast was small but sharp, shrapnel pinging off the walls. Jake shielded her, his body pressing hers to the floor. His hand grazed her chest again in the chaos, and she hissed, "Not the time, Carter." "Saving your ass," he growled, scanning for more threats as emergency shields snapped up around the dignitaries. The server bolted, and Jake fired, hitting a control panel. The exit sealed, trapping the attacker as station security swarmed in. Lila's golden eyes were wide, adrenaline pumping. "You're fast. Just doing my job," Jake said, helping her up. Torin's glare softened slightly. Grudging respect, maybe. Koran watched, his expression unreadable. "Impressive, human." Jake didn't reply. That wasn't random. Someone wanted Lila dead, and the game had just begun. Back in her quarters, Jake paced, replaying the attack. That blast was timed. They knew where you'd be. Lila sat on a cushioned bench, her tail curling beside her. "You think it's an inside job?" "Could be," he said, pulling up a hollow display of the hall. "Someone's feeding info, your schedule, your habits." Torin stormed in, fur bristling. "Are you accusing Solari of betrayal?" "No one's pointing fingers," Jake said, zooming in on the attacker's blurred image. "But someone's got access they shouldn't." Lila stood, her presence commanding despite the tension. "We need new protocols. Random routes, no advance notice." "You're giving him control?" Torin's tail lashed. "He's keeping me alive," she shot back, her voice sharp. "Make it happen, Torin." The security chief hissed, but nodded. "As you command." Later, a second attack came fast. They were moving through a maintenance tunnel, Jake's idea to avoid the main corridors, when a panel blew open ahead. 2 figures in black armor dropped in, blades flashing. Jake shoved Lila behind a crate, drawing his pistol. "Stay down." The first attacker lunged, and Jake ducked, firing a shot that grazed the figure's shoulder. The second swung a blade at Lila, who rolled aside with feline grace, her tail whipping the air. Jake tackled the second assailant, pinning them against the wall. His elbow slammed their helmet, cracking it open to reveal a Solari face, young, scarred, and furious. "Who sent you?" Jake demanded, pressing his gun to their temple. The Solari spat blood and grinned. "You'll see." A third explosion rocked the tunnel, collapsing a section behind them. Jake grabbed Lila's arm, pulling her toward an escape hatch. The narrow chute forced them close, her body pressed against his hands slipping to her hip as they slid down. She landed on top of him in a dark bunker, her breath hot against his neck. "Get off," she muttered, but her tone lacked bite. "Trying," he said, shifting so his hand brushed her backside briefly. She glared, but a flicker of amusement crossed her face. The bunker was a safe house, off-grid, stocked with supplies. Jake checked the console, sealing the entrance. "We're good for now." Lila sat, rubbing her arm where a blade had nicked her. "They're relentless." Jake grabbed a medkit, kneeling beside her. "Let me see." She pulled her sleeve up, revealing a shallow cut. He cleaned it, his fingers brushing the curve of her shoulder, then accidentally grazing her chest as he adjusted her tunic. Her golden eyes locked on his, a silent challenge. "Careful, human," she said, voice low. "Always am," he replied, finishing the bandage. "You're tougher than you look." "Years of war," she said, studying him. "You?" "Years of running," he admitted, tapping a scar on his jaw. "HFY didn't like my smuggling routes." Her tail brushed his leg again, deliberate this time. "Maybe you're not as useless as Torin thinks." Before he could answer, the console beeped, motion outside. Jake dimmed the lights, weapon ready. Round two's coming. The bunker's dim lights cast long shadows across the steel floor as Jake crouched by the console, his pistol trained on the sealed hatch. The motion alert pulsed red, a steady heartbeat signaling trouble outside. Lila stood beside him, her golden eyes narrowed, tail flicking with restless energy. The air smelled faintly of ozone and the spiced scent that clung to her, something exotic Jake couldn't place but found oddly distracting. "How many?" she asked, her voice steady despite the cut on her arm. "3, maybe 4, Jake said, scanning the grainy feed from a hidden sensor. Dark shapes moved in the tunnel beyond, their outlines blurred by static. "Professionals." "They're not rushing." Means they know we're cornered. Lila's ears twitched. Or they're waiting for something. Jake shot her a sidelong glance. "You're full of optimism, aren't you?" "Realism," she corrected, stepping closer to peer at the screen. Her shoulder brushed his, and he caught a whiff of that scent again, sharper now with her nearness. "What's the plan, Carter?" "Hold tight," he said, adjusting the console to trigger a decoy signal, a trick he'd picked up smuggling contraband past HFY patrols. "If they bite, we've got a window to move." She nodded, trusting his call, and Jake felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, pride, maybe, that she didn't question him. The decoy worked. The shapes on the feed shifted, drawn toward a fake heat signature down the tunnel. Jake grabbed her wrist. "Now!" They slipped through a side hatch into a narrower passage, a maintenance chute barely wide enough for one. Lila went first, her lithe frame navigating the tight space with ease. Jake followed, his broader shoulders scraping the walls. Halfway through, a jagged edge snagged her tunic, and she stumbled. Jake lunged to catch her, his hands sliding to her hips to steady her. His fingers brushed the curve of her backside through the thin fabric, and she froze, glancing back with a raised brow. "Necessary?" she asked, her tone dry but edged with something playful. "Keeping you upright," he said, letting go fast, though his pulse kicked up a notch. "Keep moving." She smirked, a flash of Fong catching the dim light, and continued on. They emerged into a storage bay, crates stacked high, air thick with dust. Jake sealed the hatch behind them, buying time. Lila leaned against a crate, catching her breath, her auburn hair clinging to her sweat-damp neck. "This isn't random," she said, golden eyes meeting his. Someone's tracking us. Agreed, Jake replied, checking his pistol's charge. That's Solari in the tunnel. He knew we'd be there. Inside job. Her tail lashed, a sign of agitation. Torin wouldn't betray me. Not saying it's him, Jake said, holstering his weapon. But someone close has loose lips. Before she could argue, a soft thud echoed from above, a crate shifting, then another. Jake yanked Lila down just as a figure dropped from the stack, landing where she'd stood. The attacker was Solari, female, lean, with russet fur and cold, familiar eyes. Jake recognized her from Lila's file. Mara, a former comrade from the Border Wars, now a ghost in the shadows. Mara, Lila's voice cracked with disbelief, her posture shifting to something primal, claws flexing. Surprised? Mara's tone was bitter, her blade gleaming as she circled them. You always thought you were better, Lila. The warrior who got to play diplomat while I bled in the dirt. Jake stepped between them, gun raised. Back off. This doesn't end well for you. Mara ignored him, her gaze locked on Lila. You were supposed to marry Karan, secure the treaty. Instead, you're running with this human filth. Lila's ears flattened. The treaty's a lie. Karan's using it to choke us. Lies you tell yourself. Mara spat, lunging. Jake fired, but she dodged, her speed uncanny. Lila met her mid-strike, claws clashing with steel. The fight was brutal. Two Solari warriors, grace turned lethal. Jake circled, looking for a shot, but they moved too fast. Mara slashed, catching Lila's side. Blood darkened her tunic, and Jake's gut twisted. He tackled Mara, slamming her into a crate. She twisted free, kicking him back, but Lila pounced, pinning her old friend to the ground. Mara's blade clattered away, and for a moment, silence hung heavy. What? Lila demanded, her voice raw. Mara's eyes softened, then hardened again. Karan promised me power. You threw it away for him. She nodded at Jake, disgust curling her lips. Lila hesitated, claws at Mara's throat. You were my sister, and you chose a human, Mara whispered. With a sudden jerk, she grabbed a hidden dagger and drove it into her own chest, a final act of defiance. Lila recoiled, golden eyes wide with shock as Mara slumped, lifeless. Jake knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder. You okay? She didn't answer, staring at the blood on her hands. He pulled her up gently, his fingers brushing her waist as he steadied her. We need to move. She wasn't alone. Lila nodded, numb but resolute. They found a comm device on Mara's body, its screen flickering with a HFY transmission. Eliminate the diplomat. Secure the treaty. Jake pocketed it. Proof Karan's behind this. The bay's exit led to a civilian sector, an apartment Jake had stashed years ago under a fake name, a smuggler's contingency. It was small, a main room with a worn couch, a kitchen nook, and a single bedroom. Lila examined it, her tail swaying curiously. Not exactly a palace, Jake said, activating hidden security systems. It's secure, she replied, shedding her torn tunic's outer layer to reveal a form-fitting undersuit. Jake turned to give her privacy, but she caught his arm. Help me with this. He faced her, hesitant, as she pointed to a gash on her side. He grabbed the medkit, kneeling close. Her undersuit hugged her curves, and as he cleaned the wound, his hand brushed the swell of her chest accidentally. She tensed, then relaxed, her golden eyes searching his face. You're not squeamish, she said, a faint smile tugging her lips. Seen worse, he replied, bandaging her up. You felt worse, she admitted, her tail brushing his knee deliberately this time. Thanks, Carter. He stood, breaking the moment. Rest. We got a long night. But rest didn't come. Hours later, the comm device chimed, pulling them from a tense silence. Jake activated it, revealing a grainy feed of Torin, bruised, alive but captive. Lila, he rasped. They hit the delegation. Gas attack. I got out, but they're hunting you. Oh, she demanded, leaning in, her shoulder pressing against Jake's. Teacher was sis, Torin said. Karan's orders. He knows you're with a human. The feed cut out. Jake cursed under his breath. We're burned. Lila's tail lashed. We need to get off this station. Not yet, Jake said, pulling up a map. I've got another spot, deeper off-grid. We go dark until we figure this out. She nodded, trust solidifying between them. As they packed, her hand brushed his, lingering a heartbeat too long. You're not what I expected, human. Likewise, he said, meeting her gaze. The air crackled, but the mission loomed. They slipped into the night, shadows closing in. The civilian sector buzzed with life as Jake led Lila through its labyrinthine depths. The station's underbelly a stark contrast to the polished trade halls above. Neon signs flickered over cramped stalls, and the air hummed with a dozen alien tongues bartering wares. Jake kept his head low, his jacket hood pulled tight, while Lila mirrored him in a borrowed cloak, her tail tucked beneath to hide its telltale rings. The map on his wrist device pulsed faintly, guiding them toward a decommissioned waste tunnel, a route so obscure even station security rarely patrolled it. Stay close, Jake murmured, weaving past a hulking trader juggling glowing orbs. We're exposed here. Lila nodded, her golden eyes scanning the crowd. How far? 10 minutes if we're lucky, he said, sidestepping a puddle of something viscous. Longer if we're not. Luck didn't hold. A public screen overhead crackled to life, broadcasting a security alert in flashing red. Their faces, Jake's grizzled mugshot from his smuggling days, Lila's regal diplomat portrait, labeled as fugitives. Wanted, dead or alive. Reward, 500,000 credits. The crowd shifted, eyes darting, and Jake felt the weight of greed settle over them like a shroud. Move, he hissed, grabbing Lila's arm. They ducked into a narrow alley as a trio of bounty hunters, scaled HFY mercenaries with clawed gauntlets, pushed through the market, sniffing the air. Jake shoved Lila behind a stack of crates, their bodies pressed tight in the shadows. His hand slipped to her waist, brushing the curve of her hip as he steadied her, and she shot him a look, half annoyance, half something warmer. Bad timing, she whispered, her breath tickling his ear. Story of my life, he muttered, peering out. The hunters passed, their hisses fading, and Jake exhaled. Clear. Let's go. The waste tunnel was a dank, echoing chute, its walls slick with grime. Jake led the way, his boots splashing through shallow runoff, Lila close behind. The darkness suited her Solari senses. She moved with feline precision, her night vision cutting through the gloom. Halfway in, a rusted grate blocked their path. Jake knelt to pry it loose, but it stuck fast. Lila squeezed in beside him, her shoulder pressing against his as she gripped the bars. On 3, she said. 1, 2. They pulled, muscles straining, and the grate gave with a screech. Momentum sent Lila tumbling into Jake, her chest colliding with his. For a heartbeat, they froze, her softness against his hard frame, her golden eyes locking with his gray ones. She smirked, pulling back. You're stronger than you look. Years of hauling cargo, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. You're not bad yourself. The tunnel opened into a forgotten cargo bay, a smuggler's haven Jake had used in his wilder days. A battered ship sat docked at Bay 9, its hull patched, but unassuming, perfect for slipping past patrols. A grizzled figure supervised the loading. Revik, a human smuggler with a cybernetic arm and a permanent scowl. He spotted Jake and froze, then waved off his crew. Carter, Revik growled, his voice rough as gravel. You've got a knack for bad timing. Station's locked down. Need a ride? Jake said, stepping forward. Off-grid. No questions. Revik's cybernetic eye word, focusing on Lila. That's the diplomat they're tearing the place apart for. You're a walking death warrant. Can you help or not? Jake's hand hovered near his pistol. Revik sighed, scratching his stubbled jaw. Gotta run to Vexus 9, medical supplies. Leaves in 15 if they don't cancel it. Cost you. Lila slipped a silver ring from her finger, its Solari runes glinting. This worth anything? Revik pocketed it with a grunt. Container 12. Stay quiet, stay alive. The container was a cramped metal box, barely big enough for 2. Jake climbed in first, settling against the wall, and Lila followed, her knees brushing his as she squeezed in. The door sealed, plunging them into darkness broken only by a faint emergency light. The ship lurched as it loaded, and Lila shifted, her shoulder pressing against his chest. "Tight fit," she said, her voice low, harmonic undertones stirring the air. "Better than a HFY cell," Jake replied, adjusting his position. His hand grazed her thigh unintentionally, and she didn't flinch, just watched him, her golden eyes glowing faintly. "You're not wrong," she said, a small smile tugging her lips. "Torin's message. Karan's desperate." "What?" Jake pulled out Mara's comm device, its screen cracked but functional. He tapped it, replaying the HFY order. "Eliminate the diplomat. Secure the treaty. He's not just after Solari. That gas attack, meant to frame humans, start a war he can win." Lila's tail brushed his leg, a deliberate touch this time. "And us. Collateral," he said, meeting her gaze. "Or a threat he didn't expect." The ship rumbled as it cleared the station, engines humming through the walls. Hours passed in the dark, the silence stretching until Lila broke it. "Tell me about humans, Carter. You're bonding." He raised a brow, caught off guard. "What, like love?" "Yes," she said, leaning closer, her scent filling the space. "Solari mate for lineage. Duty. You choose for what?" "Feeling, mostly," he said, scratching his jaw. "Messy, stupid feeling. Loyalty too, sometimes. Not so different from you." She tilted her head, studying him. "And you? Ever chosen?" "Once," he admitted, voice rough. "Didn't end well." HFY got her. Her hand rested on his arm, claws retracted, a rare softness in her touch. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, covering her hand with his. "Keeps me sharp." Their eyes locked, the air thickening. She leaned in, tentative, and their lips met. A slow, explorative kiss, human and Solari bridging worlds. Jake pulled her closer, his hand sliding to her lower back, fingers tracing the edge of her undersuit. She pressed against him, a quiet hum escaping her throat, and for a moment, the galaxy's chaos faded. The ship jolted, breaking the spell. Jake pulled back, breathing hard. "Bad idea." "Probably," she agreed, her voice husky, but her smile lingered. "No regrets." "None," he said, grinning. Yet, a chime interrupted them, Rivik's voice over a hidden speaker. "Vexus, 9 in sight. You've got friends waiting, Carter. Hope of the right kind." Jake frowned, checking the comm device. A new message blinked, coordinates encrypted from Riley, his old smuggling partner turned shadow operative. "Looks like we've got a pickup." Lila straightened. "All business again." "Who?" "Someone I trust," he said, pocketing the device. "We're not out of this yet." The container opened planet side, revealing Vexus 9's barren expanse, red dust and jagged cliffs under a bruised sky. Rivik waved them out. "You're on your own. Don't die." A ground transport waited at the bay's edge, Riley leaning against it, tall, wiry, with a smirk that hadn't changed since their smuggling days. "Jake, you look like hell." "Who's the VIP?" "Lila," she said, stepping forward, cloak discarded. Her undersuit gleamed under the faint sun, and Riley whistled low. "Trouble in style," he said, then nodded at Jake. "Got your signal. We've got a safe house, but word's out, Karan's upping the ante." Jake climbed into the transport, Lila beside him. "How bad?" "Bad," Riley said, starting the engine. "He's moving the wedding up. Wants her back, or dead, before it happens." Lila's tail lashed. "He'll get neither." Jake met her eyes, a silent pact forming. The road ahead was treacherous, but they'd face it together, for now. The ground transport rumbled across Vexus 9's desolate plains, kicking up clouds of red dust that shimmered under the planet's weak sun. Jake sat in the back, his gray eyes fixed on the horizon, where jagged cliffs loomed like silent sentinels. Lila was beside him, her golden eyes scanning the barren landscape, her tail coiled tightly against her leg, a sign of the tension she wouldn't voice. Riley drove, his wiry frame hunched over the controls, the hum of the engine filling the silence after his bombshell. King Karan had moved the wedding up, a desperate bid to reclaim Lila or erase her. "How long?" Jake asked, his voice cutting through the low growl of the transport. "2 days," Riley replied, glancing back. THRYSS are pushing hard. Diplomatic chatter says the ceremony's set for Zorith, neutral ground. Karan's spinning it as a peace gesture, but he's got ships massing near Solari's space. Lila's claws flexed, scraping the seat. "He's forcing my hand. If I don't show, he'll claim I've sabotaged the treaty. And if you do," Jake said, meeting her gaze, "he'll kill you before the vows." Riley smirked. "Or after. Guy's got a temper. Heard he shredded a delegate last month for sneezing wrong." The transport hit a rut, jostling them. Jake's hand shot out to steady Lila, landing briefly on her chest before sliding to her shoulder. She raised a brow, but her lips twitched, a flicker of amusement in the storm. "Still clumsy, Carter?" "Still saving you," he shot back, pulling his hand away with a grin. "Focus, Riley. Where's this safe house?" "Old mining outpost," Riley said, nodding ahead. "Off the grid, run by folks who don't ask questions. We've got a day to plan before Karan's net tightens." The outpost emerged from the dust, a cluster of prefab buildings nestled in a canyon, their metal walls pitted by years of wind and neglect. As the transport rolled to a stop, a figure stepped out, a tall woman with dark skin and a soldier's stance, her short hair streaked with gray. She wore no uniform, but her presence screamed authority. "Jake Carter," she greeted, her voice crisp. "Been a while." "Lena," Jake said, climbing out and clapping her shoulder. "Thanks for the pickup." Lena's sharp eyes flicked to Lila, widening slightly. "Lila of the Solari. Didn't expect a diplomat in this mess." "Former diplomat," Lila corrected, stepping forward, her undersuit catching the faint light. "Titles don't mean much when you're a fugitive." Lena nodded, a faint smile tugging her lips. "Fair. Inside, we got work to do." The command center was a hive of activity, screens glowing with intel, operatives from half a dozen species tapping at consoles. Lena led them to a hollow table, pulling up a map of Solari and THRYSS territories. "We're a shadow unit. Track treaty breaches, wars, dirty deals. Been watching Karan for months. He's slippery, but you've stirred the pot." "Caught this on Vexus 9, Jake said, tossing Mara's comm device onto the table. Lena activated it, and the THRYSS order replayed, "Eliminate the diplomat. Secure the treaty." A second file flickered up. Encrypted troop movements, 3 THRYSS battle groups, disguised as trade escorts, poised near Solari borders. Lila's tail lashed, her voice hard. "This isn't peace. It's an invasion." "Worse," Lena said, zooming in on a classified treaty draft. Hidden clauses glowed in red. Unrestricted THRYSS access to Solari defenses, control of key systems, all masked in diplomatic jargon. It's a takeover, legal, quiet, and permanent. Once Karan marries you, he's got a claim to your authority. These clauses do the rest. "My family wouldn't sign this," Lila insisted, leaning over the table, her claws denting the edge. "They might not know," Jake said, pointing at the fine print. "It's buried deep. Without the right lens, it's invisible." Lena nodded grimly. "And Karan's got a backup. Intel says your cousin, Varen, has been cozying up to THRYSS reps. If you're out, he steps in, pliable, ambitious, and blind to the trap." Lila's ears flattened, a low growl rumbling in her throat. "Varen's always wanted my place. If he's complicit, we need proof," Jake said, crossing his arms. "And a way to warn your people. That's why you're here," Lena said, her tone firm. "Lila, your testimony and authentication codes can validate this intel. We take it to the Solari Council, expose Karan before the wedding seals the deal." "A raid?" Jake asked, raising a brow. "Surgical," Lena confirmed. "In and out, present the evidence, trigger an alliance response. High risk, but it's our shot." Lila straightened, her golden eyes blazing. "When?" "Tomorrow," Lena said. "THRYSS are distracted prepping Zorith. We got a window." That night, the outpost quieted, operatives retreating to bunks. Jake found Lila by a viewport, staring at the stars. Her undersuit clung to her frame, the faint glow of Vexus Nine's moons outlining her silhouette. He stepped closer, his boots soft on the floor. "Second thoughts?" he asked, voice low. "Not about the mission," she said, turning to face him. Her golden eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "About us." He closed the gap, heart thudding. "Regrets?" "None," she whispered, her hand rising to trace his jaw, claws grazing his stubble. "But fear, yes. We're defying everything. Quran, my people, centuries of rules." Jake caught her wrist, his thumb brushing her pulse. "Worth it." Her answer was a kiss, fierce, unguarded, a collision of human and Solari that drowned out the galaxy's noise. He pulled her against him, hands sliding to her lower back, fingers grazing the edge of her suit where it met her skin. She pressed closer, her tail curling around his leg, a hum vibrating in her throat. The viewport's cold glass loomed behind them, but the heat between them burned brighter. They broke apart, breathless. "Tomorrow's a fight," Jake said, forehead resting against hers. "Then we fight," she replied, her voice steady. Together. Dawn came fast. The team prepped a stealth ship, sleek, unmarked, built for speed. Lena briefed them as they boarded. "Zorth's Temple of Accord hosts the wedding. We've got fake credentials, diplomatic attaches. Gets us past the outer scans. After that, it's on you." Lila adjusted her gear, a molecular mask, shifting her features just enough to dodge recognition. Jake watched, impressed. "Solari tech? Old warrior trick," she said, smirking. "You humans rely too much on guns." "Guns work," he countered, holstering his pistol. The flight to Zorth was tense, the Emerald Planet growing in the viewport. "Orbital control to vessel." A clipped voice crackled over comms. "Identify. Transport Nebula Dawn," Lena replied, voice smooth. "Diplomatic attaches for the ceremony. Code Sigma 321. A pause stretched, then code accepted. Proceed to Pad 5. Relief rippled through the crew. They landed smoothly, blending into the bustle of diplomats arriving for the spectacle. Zorth's surface gleamed. Lush jungles framed the Temple of Accord, its spires rising like a beacon of false unity. Jake and Lila moved toward the perimeter, Lena trailing with a comm link. "The temple's got an old escape tunnel," Jake said, pulling up a schematic on his wrist device. "Leads to the council wing." "Solari's secret." Lila's ears twitched. "How do you know that?" "Orion keeps tabs," he said, avoiding her eyes. "Contingency plans." "For kidnapping me?" she asked, half teasing, half sharp. "If needed," he admitted, grinning. "Lucky it's not." The tunnel entrance hid in a public garden, a fountain's base sliding open with a coded tap. They slipped inside, the dank passage swallowing them. Lila led, her night vision guiding them past dormant security nodes. "You should be active," she whispered, pausing at a control panel. "Someone's been here." Jake checked it, frowning. "Overridden, recently." Lena's voice buzzed in their earpieces. "Careful. Could be a trap." They reached the council wing's door, its silence unnerving. It slid open without resistance, revealing a lavish chamber, silk curtains, a carved desk, and a regal Solari woman with silver-streaked auburn fur. Saren, Lila's mother, turned, her golden eyes calm. "Mother," Lila said, mask dissolving as she stepped forward. "Daughter," Saren replied, unruffled. "I knew you'd come." Jake tensed, hand on his pistol. "You were expecting us?" Saren's tail swayed, a faint smile playing on her lips. "A mother always knows." The air in Saren's chamber hung heavy with the scent of Solari incense, a faint haze curling around the silk curtains. Jake stood rigid, his hand resting on his pistol, gray eyes flicking between Lila and her mother. Saren's calm demeanor, golden eyes steady, silver-streaked auburn fur catching the dim light, set his nerves on edge. Lila stepped forward, her molecular mask fully dissolved, revealing the fierce determination he'd come to know. Her tail lashed once, then stilled, a warrior facing a battlefield she couldn't yet see. You knew we'd come, Lila said, her voice sharp but tinged with something raw. Ow! Saren rose from her desk, her movements graceful despite the years etched into her features. A mother senses her child's path, even when it strays. Her gaze shifted to Jake, assessing. And I've heard of you, Carter. The human who's turned my daughter into a fugitive. Save her life, Jake corrected, his tone flat. More than once. Saren's lips curved faintly, neither warm nor cold. So I've been told. Lila cut in, her claws flexing. Mother, we've uncovered Karan's plan. The treaty, it's a trap. Hidden clauses give HFY control of our defenses, our territory. He's staging a takeover, not peace. Saren's tail swayed, a slow, deliberate motion. Yes, I know. The words landed like a blow. Lila froze, golden eyes widening. Jake's grip tightened on his pistol, instinct screaming. You know, Lila's voice rose, disbelief cracking her composure. And you've done nothing? Saren moved to a control panel, her claws tapping a sequence. A hollow display flared to life, showing Solari defense grids, stealth ships positioned along HFY approach vectors, monitoring stations cloaked in asteroid fields. We've done more than you realize, she said, her tone cool. Karan thinks he's luring us into submission. We've let him believe it. Jake stepped closer, scanning the map. A counterstrike. You're setting him up to overplay his hand. Precisely, Saren said, turning to face them. The wedding tomorrow. When Karan invokes those clauses, we expose him to the Interstellar Council. His treachery becomes his cage. Lila's ears flattened, her voice trembling with fury. And I'm the bait? You'd sacrifice me to spring this trap? Saren's gaze softened, just for a moment. That was the plan, until you complicated it with him. She nodded at Jake, her expression unreadable. Before Lila could respond, the chamber door slid open. Varen strode in, his russet fur gleaming, taller than Lila with a swagger that oozed entitlement. Royal guards flanked him, their claws glinting under the low light. His cold eyes locked on Lila, a smirk revealing sharp fangs. Cousin, convenient timing, right before the ceremony. Varen, Lila said, her tone icy. Been busy in my absence. Someone had to clean up your mess, he replied, his gaze flicking to Jake with disdain. Running off with this human. Pathetic. Jake met his stare, unflinching. Call it what you want. She's still breathing. Varen's tail lashed. Not for long. He turned to Saren. High Elder, the council's ruled. Lila's a traitor. Her actions with this filth endanger us all. She's to be confined until the wedding. The human goes to Karan. Saren's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. No one's being handed over. With respect, Varen said, his tone anything but, that's not your call alone. The council's decree stands. He produced a hollow tablet, the Solari seal glowing. Treason confirmed by her indiscretions. Lila's face flushed, but she stepped forward, shielding Jake. My choices don't change the truth. Karan's the threat, not me. A convenient story, Varen sneered, after you were caught with him. The footage was clear, cozy in that human's bed. Jake's jaw tightened, but Lila held her ground. The treaty's alive, Varen. You'd know that if you weren't so busy kissing HFY scales. Varen's smirk faltered, then returned colder. Peace requires sacrifice. My sister, Tala, will take your place, untainted, loyal. A better bride. Lena's voice buzzed in Jake's earpiece, urgent. We've got intel. HFY ships are moving now, not waiting for the wedding. It's a blitz. Jake related, voice low. Karan's not playing politics anymore. He's ready to strike. Saren's ears twitched, her calm cracking. If true, our timeline's gone. We're not ready. Then cancel it, Jake said, stepping forward. Call out Karan now, publicly. And spark a war we can't win yet, Varen snapped. The Solari would burn, while you humans hide. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Saren broke it, her voice weary. Varen, leave us. I'll speak with him alone. High Elder, he began, but her glare silenced him. Go, she commanded, her harmonic tone edged with steel. Varen retreated, guards in tow, his scowl promising trouble. Once the door sealed, Saren sank in her chair, the weight of centuries pressing on her. Koran's moved faster than we predicted. Our defenses aren't fully deployed. He's skipping the charade, Lila said, her voice hard. Marriage was just a distraction. Why not attack outright? Jake asked, frowning. Legitimacy, Saren replied, her eyes meeting his. A treaty claim keeps the alliance off his back. War triggers pacts he can't fight. Jake nodded, gears turning. So we used the wedding, broadcast his moves live, forced the alliance to act. Lila caught on, her tail flicking. The Temple of Accord. Every species will be watching. We show the evidence there. It's risky, Saren said, studying them. Karam will suspect. You need to play the part, Lila. Go as his bride. Start the ceremony. Lila's claws dug into her palms. And marry him? No. Jake cut in, his voice firm. She gets to the altar, we drop the proof before the vows. He'll think he's won till it's too late. Saren's gaze lingered on Jake, then softened toward Lila. It could work, but Karan's cunning. He'll watch every move. I can do it, Lila said, her resolve steeling. I'll play the dutiful diplomat. Renounce my mistake with the human who led me astray. The word stung, but Jake kept his face neutral. Good. He'll buy it if you sell it. Saren stood, regal once more. Then it's settled. Varen will push for your arrest, but I'll handle him. Prepare for the pre-wedding rites. They start at dawn. Lila nodded, but as Saren summoned attendants to escort her away, she cast Jake a glance. In that fleeting look, a storm of emotions passed. Fear, trust, and something deeper, unspoken. Until tomorrow, she whispered. Until tomorrow, Jake replied, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. The door closed, leaving him with Saren and Lena, who'd slipped in silently. She's strong, Saren said, her tone soft. Stronger with you. She's the backbone, Jake said, running a hand through his hair. I'm just the muscle. Lena smirked through the earpiece. Keep telling yourself that, Carter. We've got 6 hours to rig the temple feed. Evidence goes live when you signal. Saren approached, her presence commanding. The council wants a new treaty after this. One built on truth, not marriages. They'll need someone who bridges Solari and human worlds. Jake raised a brow. Lila, if she survives, Saren said, her eyes piercing. And if you do, he nodded, the weight settling in. The temple loomed ahead, a stage for truth or a tomb. As Saren departed, Jake stood alone, the memory of Lila's kiss burning in his mind. Tomorrow, they'd face the fire, together or not at all. The Temple of Accord gleamed under Zoratha's twin suns, its ancient spires piercing the sky like a monument to forgotten promises. Inside, the vast hall buzzed with the murmur of dignitaries from across the galaxy, their robes and scales shimmering beneath the soaring dome. Jake stood at the edge of the crowd, dressed in the sleek black uniform of a Solari royal guard, a disguise Saren had arranged. His gray eyes scanned the room, noting the HFY security forces' subtle positions, their clawed hands resting on concealed weapons. The air crackled with anticipation, a powder keg waiting for a spark. "Com check," Lena's voice whispered through his earpiece, sharp and steady. "Confirmed," Jake murmured, adjusting the tiny device. "You set. Feed's rigged," she replied from a hidden monitoring station. "Evidence goes live on your signal. Don't screw it up, Carter." King Karan entered to a fanfare of ceremonial horns, his reptilian form towering over his entourage. His scales gleamed with ceremonial oils, iridescent crest fully flared, a predator savoring his moment. The crowd bowed as he took his place at the altar, a conqueror cloaked in diplomacy. Jake's stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed this was wrong, but the plan hinged on patience. The massive rear doors parted, and Lila appeared, radiant in Solari ceremonial garb, silver and sapphire fabric cascading over her form, accentuating her auburn hair and golden eyes. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. She was breathtaking, a vision of regal defiance. Jake's breath caught, but her gaze stayed forward, never once flicking to him. She'd sold her renunciation the day before, publicly declaring her time with him a lapse, begging forgiveness for the sake of peace. Karan had lapped it up, his slit pupils glinting with triumph. Now, she approached the altar, her steps measured, her expression serene. The Solari High Priestess began the rites, her melodic voice echoing through the hall. Before these witnesses, we unite two worlds in harmony. King Karan of the HFY, do you come freely to this union? I do, Karan intoned, his harmonics smooth and predatory, designed to charm. And you, Lila of the Solari, do you come freely? The priestess turned to her, the moment hanging like a blade. Lila's eyes found Jake's across the temple, a fleeting connection, a spark of steel beneath her calm. Before I answer, she said, her voice ringing clear, I must fulfill my duty to truth. She faced the crowd, raising a hand. Honored guests, I bear evidence that demands your attention. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Karan's crest twitched, a warning. This is not the time, diplomat, he hissed, his composure thinning. It's precisely the time, Lila countered, her tone unwavering. She nodded, and Jake tapped his earpiece, the signal. The temple's central hollow display flared to life, projecting HFY troop movements, intercepted orders, and the treaty's hidden clauses in stark red. Gasps erupted as the truth unfolded. Karan's plan to seize Solari systems, masked as peace. This is no union, Lila declared, her golden eyes blazing. It's conquest. Chaos broke. Dignitaries shouted. HFY guards surged toward Lila, but Solari forces intercepted, claws clashing with scales. Karan roared, lunging at her with a ceremonial dagger drawn from his regalia. Jake was already moving, years of instinct propelling him across the hall. He tackled Karan mid-strike, deflecting the blade with a grunt. The HFY king's strength was brutal, his reptilian power slamming Jake back, but he'd studied their physiology, knew the weak spots. You dare, human? Karan snarled, slashing again. The blade grazed Jake's arm, blood welling, but he twisted, locking Karan's wrist and driving him down with the king's own momentum. Guards swarmed, restraining the thrashing HFY as alliance reps demanded order. Lila stepped forward, her voice cutting through the din. By Solari authority and interstellar witness, I declare this treaty void. The holoscreens shifted, live feeds of Alliance ships encircling HFY fleets, outmaneuvering them before they could strike. Karan's roar faded to a hiss, his plans crumbling. You've won nothing, he spat at Jake, his voice low. My legacy endures. Tell it to the cell, Jake replied, wiping blood from his arm as Alliance security hauled Karan away. The crowd thinned, dignitaries filing out in stunned silence. Saren approached, her silver-streaked fur catching the light. You've done it, she said, her tone measured. The Alliance proposes a new treaty, transparent, no sacrifices. They want a bridge between our worlds. Lila nodded, shedding her ceremonial outer layer. And Varen, confined, Saren said. His ambition blinded him. But the Council's wary. Your connection with Carter complicates things. Jake smirked faintly. Guess I'm trouble. Useful trouble, Saren replied, a rare warmth in her eyes. Lila, they've asked for you to lead the talks. If you choose it. Lila glanced at Jake, a question in her gaze. He shrugged. Your call. I'm just a muscle. She smiled, small but real. We'll see. Saren departed, leaving them alone in the temple's quiet heart. Lila stepped closer, her undersuit hugging her form, blood and dust smudging her elegance. You're hurt, she said, reaching for his arm. It's nothing, he said, but he didn't pull away as her fingers brushed the wound, gentle despite her claws. You're a terrible liar, she teased, her tail swaying. Their hands met, fingers intertwining. Human and Solari, a bond forged in fire. No regrets? He asked, voice low. Only possibilities, she replied, leaning in. Their kiss was soft at first, then deepened, a promise amid the wreckage. Her tail curled around his leg, a quiet claim, and he pulled her closer, hands resting on her hips, savoring the warmth through her suit. The moment broke as reality loomed. "What now?" Jake asked, forehead against hers. "Vexus 9, she said, decisive. "I'm done with titles. Let someone else play diplomat." He raised a brow. "Fugitives again?" "Free," she corrected, her golden eyes glinting. "Unless you're scared." "Never," he grinned, and they slipped out, leaving the temple behind. Weeks later, Vexus 9's red plains stretched beneath a bruised sky. Their new home was a simple shack atop a cliff, rough, but theirs. Jake hammered a loose panel on the roof, sweat beading on his brow. When Lila climbed up, her undersuit swapped for a loose tunic. She stumbled, tumbling into him, and he caught her, hands landing on her backside as she laughed. A rare, unguarded sound. "Clumsy now," he teased, steadying her. "Your fault," she shot back, straddling his lap playfully. Their lips met, a messy, joyful kiss under the fading sun, her tail brushing his thigh. The galaxy could wait. That night, a final threat came. Shadows moved outside. HFY assassins, Charon's last gambit from his cell. Jake woke first, pistol drawn, nudging Lila. She grabbed a blade, her warrior instincts flaring. The fight was swift, 2 against 5, but they moved as one. Jake shot a pair down, Lila's blade slashing through another, her tail tripping a third for Jake to finish. The last fled, bloodied, into the dark. Breathing hard, they stood amid the bodies. "Persistent bastard," Jake muttered, holstering his gun. "He'll learn," Lila said, wiping her blade. She retrieved a comm device from one, a cracked screen flickering with a signal, not HFY, but something older, deeper. A voice hissed through static. "The game shifts." Jake frowned. "New player?" "Maybe," Lila said, tossing it aside. "Later. We've earned this." They returned to the shack, collapsing onto a shared cot. Her head rested on his chest, his arm around her, fingers tracing her side. "Worth it?" he asked, voice soft. "Every second," she murmured, her golden eyes closing. The stars above Vexus 9 burned bright, a new chapter unfolding. One they'd write together, free and unbroken.